sports writer, boxing writer the last 30, 35 years, formerly the Philadelphia Daily News, and 2020 International Boxing Hall of Famer Bernard Fernandez. Bernard, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Mark. How about you?
I'm doing okay. I can't complain that we're here. We're doing a doing a great broadcast here, and I understand you have a tremendous new project that has just hit the bookstores, and I guess because no one's going into bookstores right now, on Amazon.com, a great new book called Championship Rounds, basically a collection of your stories from the past 30, 35 years. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, it's an anthology, and one of the things that gave me the idea for doing this, Steve Springer, who is the former boxing writer for the Los Angeles Times, he was telling me about the great thing about books. He said, "Look, we're sports writers. We do good work, but the next day it's lying in the bottom of a bird cage or a trapping fish or it's being put out for recyclables or whatever." He likened what we do on a daily basis to people that do really nice ice sculptures or make sandcastles at the beach. Well, the problem with that is that ice sculptures melt, sandcastles, the tide comes in, and your stories that the stories that you're really proud of, that you really put your heart and soul into, they're there one day and they're gone the next, and that kind of stuck with me. I actually thought about doing this years ago, but I had four kids, and then my kids grew up, and then I had six grandkids, and I was worried that to do a book the right way, I'd have to take at least a year, all my vacation time, my free time, my weekends, whatever, to devote it to that book, and I would be shortchanging my wife and my family, and so I just held it up. But now, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and I knew a lot of the stories that I wanted to include, and I went ahead and said, "Hey, I'm going to do it," and I did. There's 35 magazine and essay length stories in there, and all of them, I was very, very pleased with. I was pleased with the stories, the people they had. It's boxing, but it's also human interest stuff, and I think it's a good read.
I think the very good thing about it, obviously you're known for writing for the Philadelphia Daily News, but you have stories from about 5 or 6 different outlets sprinkled out through the books, through the book.
Yeah, there's stuff from Ring Magazine, ringtv.com, which is the Ring Magazine's website, sweetscience.com, which I've done a lot of work for since in the 8 years since I've been retired. A couple of things from 15rounds.com. You know
Go.
that. And I think one from SureDog.com. And, it's like, particularly in the last 8 years since I was not at the Daily News, most of what I was doing was for either magazines or, websites. And, really, that's where most boxing writing is being done now. You know that.
Yeah. Is there a story or two in the book that stands out? If you can touch on real quick, or do you have a favorite story that you wrote?
Well, I think the one that probably is the tugs at the most heartstrings. I mean, we all know, Bernard Hopkins, and I covered his first fight, I covered his last fight, and I covered most of the ones in between. But the story of Sean Nagler, who was the Bernard Hopkins fan, teenage kid,
Mm-hmm.
who had cancer. He had his leg amputated below the knee, and the Make-A-Wish Foundation brought him out to Las Vegas and his family to meet with Hopkins for Hopkins's fight with Joe Calzaghe. And there was only one media person that was allowed to attend this get-together in Bernard Hopkins' hotel suite, and I happened to be that person. And it was a great story. They didn't want to overplay it and whatever, but the kid Hopkins lost the fight, but later on, Sean Nagler was given like 3 weeks to live, and he hung on for like 3 months. And the last conscious thing that he did was the night that Hopkins, beat Kelly Pavlik, and he slipped away that night, and he was unconscious and died a few days later. I mean, it's an incredible story,
Mm-hmm.
and
Remember it
I was
well.
very fortunate to have been there for that.
I got a question from our good friend Lee Groves, who's chiming in on the Facebook. He asked, how did you whittle down the stories? You've written thousands upon thousands. His question is, please describe your whittling down process in terms of what stories to include.
Well, here's the book, and
Um,
what I did was I tried to do is sections. One was tales worth telling, which were sort of like the Sean Nagler story, and some of Seamus McDonough, referee Mills Lane. He's got an amazing story to tell. Tony Ayala, Craig Bojanowski, the one-legged
One leg
boxer.
fighter. He fought a
Yeah,
couple times
and,
with the Blue
and
Horizon.
then another section is the heavyweights. Another section is the non-heavyweights. Then screenings, which had to do with like boxing movies and stuff like that. Women of boxing, which there was something on Jackie Frazier and Layla Ali and Jackie Tonawanda and Clarissa Shields, and then farewells, which is stories about boxing personalities, fighters, and cornermen, who passed away and left a legacy.
Now there are two specific questions that I have. Two stories. One was the Mike Tyson fight in Japan, where you were one, if not of a couple American journalists who went over.
Yeah, this is when newspapers had money. I mean, I try to, I went to Tokyo for 8 days. I was in Tokyo for 8 days, and now I think if there was someone like a Mike Tyson that was going to fight in Japan, maybe most American newspapers now would maybe let their writers go to a Japanese restaurant or something like that, here in the United States and watch it on TV or whatever. But I went over there, and it takes 24 hours, and you have to cross 14 time zones to get there.
Yeah.
So for like the first 2 days, I'm like a zombie because I was wide awake, at 4 a.m, and then when I was supposed to be going to the press conferences, I was a zombie. But Tyson was doing 2 press conferences daily, one with the British media. He loved those British guys, and he gave them good stuff. And one was with the American media, and he had, kind of a friction type relationship with several of them. And he was doing one-word answers, and, was just not being good. So I said, the heck with this, So after a day or two of finding out all the good stuff the British guys were getting, I started going to the British press conferences. And Don King, was kind of chortling. He knew that I wasn't British, and
Really?
and
Wonder what gave that away.
Oh, the one thing, I was just listening to the British guys asking the questions, and I'm taping everything. But I wanted to ask a question, so I tried my fake British accent. It was not good. I'm not Meryl Streep, King was falling out of his chair,
And actually, the other thing I don't know if this is the story that made the cut from the 15 rounds. That because of a story you wrote on 15rounds.com, you actually landed a role in Rocky because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Tokyo, and of course, I would not have wanted to be anywhere other than Tokyo for the biggest boxing upset ever. But that's when they filmed the scenes in Philadelphia for Rocky V, and Stan Hochman was and Elmer Smith. They had local media people that were in the scenes, for Rocky V with Tommy Morrison. And when they filmed that scene, at the Philadelphia Civic Center, I was supposed to be there, but I was in Tokyo. So several years later, there's going to be a movie called Rocky Balboa. So I wrote a kind of like a tongue-in-cheek thing saying, "Sly, you owe me," because I wasn't in Rocky Five, and a couple of days later, I get a phone call from some woman with a casting agency in Los Angeles, and she said, "Sly saw your story, and he would like you to be in his movie." He said, "We didn't have a contact number for your agent."
Hold on. When he not to interrupt. So when you get that, Sly wants you to be in his movie. Did you think you were gonna be Rambo's assistant or something, or?
I was kind of hoping. The thing is with Rambo, that you can superimpose the head. I was hoping that they would get like somebody with like Jean-Claude Van Damme's body and put my head on top of him for some action sequences or anything. But I told the woman, I said, I don't have an agent. I have a wife. She takes 100%.
At least 50.
Yeah, at least 50.
Our buddy Joe Sanliquido, he's chiming. He's taking credit for all your success. I don't know why he would do something like that.
Well, Miller Huggins was responsible for Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Everybody knows that.
There you go. There you go. What gives you more joy? I know, like when you were covering a lot of the fights of the Blue Horizon, you'll see a fighter start at zero and work his way up. Guys like Charles Brewer and some of those other guys, maybe David Reed as he starts as a young amateur. Or do you get more joy? Maybe. But I'm saying, and Arturo Gatti at the Blue Horizon, seeing a guy covering him, maybe covering him throughout his, quote, formidable years, and then writing that big story when he's fighting for a world title, or is it still something about the mega fights out in Vegas or Atlantic City, New York? I mean, which do you prefer?
Well, a lot of people know that my father had been a boxer who was a welterweight. Matter of fact, in my home office, until I get the Hall of Fame ring, my most prized possession is a poster that my father was in the primary undercard bout under an Archie Moore main event. So the thing is that going back to the 1950s, when I was a kid in grade school, I'd be watching fights on like Cavalcade of Sports with my dad. So when I came to the great town of Philadelphia, I was doing covering different sports. But when Elmer Smith, who had been the boxing writer, was going to go into a general sports column, I think I was in play. They were going to change beats around for the Flyers or the Eagles. And I went to Mike Rathod, who was the executive sports editor, and said, I'd like to do boxing. He said, you got it, and he put me on it, and they never took me off. I was on it for almost 30 years.
What I mean, I know we talked a little bit off camera. I mean, you have so many more stories depending on to do a second book. I mean, what will make you do a second book? Because I could read those, and I'm sure a lot of great boxing fans would love to even read more of what you've given to us over the past 30+ years.
Well, I tell you what, I was very fortunate. I had a good relationship with George Foreman, who did the foreword. I called George and I said, hey, you owe me, I bought 2 of your grills. And so he said, sure, and he did the foreword and was very complimentary. Mm-hmm. And some of the people that wrote nice things about, they saw the manuscript before the book came out. Mark Kriegel, Jerry Eisenberg, Bob Mladinich, John Shulian, Lee Samuels. These are people whose opinions I value, and they like the book. And when I was putting all this stuff together into different sections, I said, wow, there's a lot left over, I like to think there's enough for a volume 2, Championship Rounds Volume 2. Matter of fact, I've even lined up Jim Lampley to do the foreword for that. So there's more to come. I don't know that there'll be a volume 3, but hopefully in 2021 there will be another one, because the way this was planned was this book was going to come out right before the Hall of Fame induction in Canastota in June. Well, that got blown to hell, because of the pandemic. Now the they're going to have the class of 2020 and 2021 going in next year. So hopefully I'll have this book and maybe another one there. It'll be a feeding frenzy. They'll have fight fans all over the world coming in, and if they want to read it, I got it.
For all the people, I mean, say 99.99% of the world, it's been a tough year for everyone, especially the last few months. But not Bernard Fernandez. He starts off the year with his LSU Tigers win the national championship. He gets the call to the Hall of Fame, and now he's got a potential, and it will be a best-selling book come out. Not too bad for the first 5+ months of 2020.
Yeah, and not only that, but if I look for some excitement during this stay-at-home thing, if it's a nice sunny day, I go through the Burger King drive-through, and get a Whopper or something, and that makes my day.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, now we're staying at home, and I heard a book could be on the way. I'm just going. The summer's coming. I'm gonna just go on my deck, put my feet up, and probably read the book. Might take me a day or two. How many pages is it?
Oh, it's a pretty taut read. The thing is, I said, well, I want to stay around 70,000 words, and it came in a little bit over 68,000. And when the book I put together, it's like 202 pages, and I said, wait a second, the next one's going to be 350. So I'm going to stretch it out. This is like my 12 rounder, and the next one will be 15.
Lee Groves again. Paint a picture for us about the day you received the word that you were going to be elected in the Boxing Hall of Fame, and the realization that you'd be going in the same class as Bernard Hopkins, who refers to you as older Bernard.
Yeah, I got the call, I think it was December 1st, and it was Ed Brophy, and he said, how are you? I said, hey, great, how are you? And I knew I was on the ballot, but there were 25 names on the ballot, and only 2 people were going in the observer category. So I was doing the math. I figured, that my odds were 12.5 to 1 against. So I figured he was going to say something like, like the old Brooklyn Dodgers, better luck next year, And he said, guess what? You're in. I said, whoa, that was cool. Was not expecting that. It was definitely a nice surprise, the pandemic was not a nice surprise. But
so Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame, Pennsylvania Boxing Hall of Fame, and now this Hall of Fame. They're going to run out of Hall of Fame
too. Got to give some props to Jersey.
And Jersey. They're going to run out of Hall of Fames for you to go.
I don't know about that. I mean, yeah. Well, I'm already in probably 4 more than ought to be.
Just a couple, topical boxing questions. Obviously, you've seen it all, covered it all, literally been there all over the world and everything. Just had a big heavyweight fight before everything got shut down. Kicked a lot of juice back into the heavyweight division with Fury and Wilder, and now Anthony Joshua champion again. What are your feelings on the heavyweight division? Are we in a nice little possible, I don't want to use the term golden age, but an age where people are going to be very excited about it?
Yeah, I mean, there was a period in 1980. Yeah, of course, Larry Holmes was still around. But there was a period in the 1980s when they had a lot of disposable alphabet champions.
Tony Tubbs, Tony Tucker, James Bone Crusher.
Bone Crusher Smith,
our good buddy Tim Witherspoon had a belt too.
And the thing is, but they were all Don King fighters, and basically they were roster fillers so that they could fight,
Tyson.
King's big guy, so that that no matter who won, Don King was the guy who came out ahead. That's what happened when Steve Little went over to London and beat Michael Nunn. Don King did not want Steve Little to be the champion. He wanted Michael Nunn to be the champion, but he was going to make sure that he had options on whoever wanted to fight. You had the Ali Frazier Foreman era. Then you had to wait a long time before you had Tyson and Holyfield and Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe. And then there was another down period. And now, we're a little bit of an upswing because look, it's long been axiomatic that as the heavyweight division goes, so goes boxing. That wasn't always the case, because when you had Duran and Ray Leonard and Hagler and Hearns, those were the four kings that they popularized, the middleweight classes. But there's some good matches to be made. I mean, I've actually, I got to say, Tyson Fury's grown on me a little bit. When I saw him get knocked down again by,
Steve
by
Cunningham.
Steve Cunningham, I said, well, I mean, if Steve Cunningham can do that to him, what's a big puncher going to do? But he's a little crazy, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, not at all. What do you think? Obviously, you're a guy who's, bookended, in terms of like the last real good era of boxing. I guess you talk about the Four Kings. You started right around that time, right? Right around the Leonard and Hagler when they were all facing each other in the almost mid '80s.
Well, the thing is, the first fight that I covered for the Philadelphia Daily News was Hagler Leonard, which was not a bad way to break in.
Not at all.
On covering boxing. But, when I had been at other papers, I did occasionally covered boxing matches occasionally, the biggest one being in the Superdome, Ali and Leon Spinks in the rematch. But when I was in at Caesar's Palace for Hagler Leonard, and it was such a huge event, it just felt like home. And Madison Square Garden, Brooklyn, West Coast, Las Vegas, Blue Horizon, wherever it was. I have to say that I always felt that I was home when I was at ringside.
I know that feeling. I know that. I can't wait to get back. What in your last couple questions? The health of the sport in 2020, as we hopefully start back up real soon after the pandemic. What do you think the health of the sport was before everything got shut down?
Well, one thing I don't really care about. I mean, Lou DiBella's talked about this, and he said that there was a time, when you had people like Angelo Dundee and Bert Sugar and so on and so forth. You'd go out to Vegas or wherever for a big fight, and they'd have the press conference, and you go right, and then you go down to the to the bar, the press line, or wherever, where the media would gather, and the promoters would be there, and these guys might be rivals, for stories or for whatever, but there was a sense of camaraderie,
Yeah.
and it got eventually replaced a little bit by corporate type decision making. A lot of the writers, people like Ron Borges and Katz and people have died away or they've retired, and the new breed, to me, they don't have that sense of well, look, we're in this pandemic thing, we're all in it together. I kind of miss that a little bit. I do. I mean, I'm not traveling as nearly as much as I used to, but you'd go to like the Flame in Las Vegas, and like Eddie Schuyler would be there. He'd be spinning stories, and he had a million of them, and I kind of miss that. I mean, I'm not sure that's coming back again, but but that's one of the things I miss.
Okay, well, just one more time, we'll put the book back up. Let everyone see that beautiful cover. So when they go to Barnes and Noble, they'll be able to see it, or when they're scouring on Amazon.com. Tell everyone else. So basically, it's Barnes and Noble and Amazon.com.
Well, the thing is that I'm not sure if Barnes and Noble is open now.
Well, when they get open.
The thing is, but the Erica Hughes, who is my editor, she did a good job of putting two gloves together for the cover. I'm on the back, but so is George.
George is there like this, though. It's all about you. It's all about you in this book. So, anything else you want to say in closing? I don't know if you want some people following you on the social media. Where can people follow you for your little thoughts, and where can they read you?
Well, the thing is that I began writing back in days of cave painting. Yes, I grew up with typewriters. You might have heard of those. Um, and I've always been not just one step, but two or three steps behind, with technology. Um, that's that's the way it is. So my nephew Jason, helped set this up. Joe is more advanced than me. Actually, everyone's more advanced than me when it comes to a lot of stuff. But um, I was told, you need to increase your Twitter profile, and so I started working on that when this book came out, and like in 3 days, it jumped like 1,500%. Um, wow. Oh yes, and one other thing too that Jason is pointing out was that when I first got a Twitter account, because yes, I will say, was it's GEAUX the number 10, which is obviously because of my LSU affiliations. It does, should say Fernandez or something like that.
Mm.
But yes, that's my Twitter handle. Go Tigers 10. And let's just hope that everything goes well and that Joe Burrow is the rookie of the year. In the NFL season. LSU wins another national championship and kicks the hell out of Alabama. And
You mentioned you mentioned your fake British voice before. Now I can picture you in your Ed Orgeron voice saying "Go Tigers," as he does
well,
after every interview.
Go like that a little bit. He's got that growly Cajun voice.
Yeah, he should. He should. I'd pay to listen to him like recite the phone book. He's got a great voice. So, well, Bernard, thank you very much for a few minutes of your time. Championship rounds you can find on Amazon.com. And when bookstores start opening, I expect the first place all you boxing fans to go is not to a bar or not to the beach. Go right to Barnes and Noble. Actually, go to Barnes and Noble, pick up the book, then take it to the beach. I mean, how's that sound?
And if you don't want to get in a car and drive to Barnes and Noble, it is available through Amazon.
Amazon.com.
Okay.
Thank